Genshin Impact's Inazuma arc was probably one of the hypest things in the gaming and anime community that happened this year, because of its interesting premise of a land surrounded by a seemingly dangerous storm where ships and sailors dare not enter, and where the unique and gifted was forcefully getting their visions taken from them. It had an intrinsic conflict that made it fresh, because unlike Liyue or Mondstadt, Inazuma was fucking dangerous, and we felt that just by how the characters in the game talk about it. Inazuma's announcement dominated Twitch for a day, and never have weebs been more excited for any character in the game than Baal. The point is, people were hyped for Inazuma, they were very excited, and now that the full story dropped, we learn that it is actually utter garbage. I see how people say how rushed the story feels like, that it was fine and that the emotions were there, and that there was nothing too serious to critique about it other than that it was meh. But the thing is, everything about the Inazuma arc was less than meh. I'm gonna tell you all in detail how the Inazuma arc is more than just a rushed story than what the community likes to think. I will only be critiquing the game on its storytelling aspect in Inazuma specifically. I also haven't read the manga, as I'm only covering the arc that's happening in the game. Now with that out of the way, let's get to the video. The announcement started really strong by teasing players about how apparently fucked up the island was. NPCs left and right were telling us about how the island was dangerous and why we shouldn't go there, and of course that builds up intrigue and curiosity. It's a cool hook that wants us to learn more. That unlike the other Archons whose job it is to protect their people, the Archon in Inazuma actively screws up her own people. Then, later we meet Kazuha. He enforces the idea in players that Inazuma really is a fucked up place by showing us a masterless vision. We learn how brutal the rulership is there, and how oppressive and dystopian it is living as a vision holder or a foreigner. But because the traveler thinks that oppressive, strong, female, and hates foreigners is a profile that fits the god that took their sibling, the traveler decides to brave the dangerous storm protecting Inazuma, shielding it from the world. Eventually, we find a way to do so. We ride on Beido's ship and set sail, bracing ourselves for a storm. But the thing is, what fucking storm? We get in Beido's ship and we just arrive. Conveniently, no problems at all. For all talks about how dangerous getting into Inazuma with the storm, there's no actual danger presented here. We just conveniently arrive. There should have been danger while we were on our way to Inazuma. Maybe a segment where we fend off rays or lightning strikes we have to avoid. Or even just a cutscene where Beidou is struggling to brave the storm. Anything at all with consequence to enforce the idea that Inazuma really is dangerous. This was one of my first disappointments and the first sign that I noticed that Inazuma may actually be overhyped and garbage, but I dismissed it, thinking about excuses to say to myself. Beidou did say she was probably one of the only capable of people commandeering a ship to enter Inazuma, so maybe it was really easy for her. But then this asshole that we apparently helped Yoimiya smuggle out of the nation just throws out of there with a fucking raft. Some guy even made a bridge from cryo users just on their way to Inazuma. But let's suspend our disbelief for a moment and continue on with the story. Then we meet Sweet Thoma, a cheaper lad that's actually one of the better characters in this arc. We get the whole segment where we learn that foreigners are harassed and exploited in Inazuma, that they can't just get out because there's a fucking storm outside, which is understandable, but at this point is no longer believable, because like I said, if an idiot with a raft can escape Inazuma's storm, surely a group of merchants on a ship can too. Besides that point, we learn that Inazuma is actually hostile to everything that's not native to the nation, and it's an excellent way to have a start with people swindling us and shit, because we learn that it's not just monsters and weather we have to look out for, but the people too. We do some errands, get ourselves into Inazuma City, and finally, we meet Ayaka. She's against the Vision Hunt decree, because obviously she has a vision, and she doesn't like people having their hopes and dreams and ambitions taken out of them, as she has seen firsthand what it's like to have it removed. She's a really nice lady who just wants to look out for the minority. And then, we see her get out of the house with her vision fucking attached to her clothes. See, this whole premise about the Vision Hunt decree is actually good. It's actually $1 million idea. But the way Mihoyo executes it actually destroys the premise of the conflict, if you think about it for more than 5 seconds. Because Mihoyo didn't really specify how the decree is handled. Is the decree just a simple manhunt for anyone with a vision? Or was she doing it systematically, where she can sense a vision when it's nearby and she has a list of people she knows has a vision and she's taking her time to decide when she's gonna take it? Thoma, Ayaka, and Yoimiya walks around the city with their visions literally just hanging from their clothes. Even a mention that they're hiding their visions would have worked, keeping it inside their pockets, living at home. Even just a bare small effort that they're trying not to get caught. A bit of effort into getting the idea that they were trying to hide would have worked. The way they frame the hunt makes it seem like the decree is just a manhunt for any vision holders, since Thoma, Ayaka, and the others have to hide in secret hideouts like the tea house. But why did the Shogun suddenly decide she was going to take Thoma's vision at that exact moment when it was required to have tension? It was plot convenience. If the Shogun can sense who has and who hasn't a vision, Wouldn't she just need to visit each house in the nation and fuck them up instead of having idiot guards do it for her? It's dumb. It completely breaks the conflict if you think about it for more than 5 seconds. The decree has been happening for years now, goddammit. By that point, the shogun should have already have everyone's visions. But sure, let's just suspend our disbelief for a moment and say that the shogun takes the visions on a spur of the moment kind of basis. So, we learned that some guy that manufactures fake visions to fool the guards has been captured, and apparently, this guy is important for the rebellion for whatever reason. We rescue him from the prison, and then Sarah Kojo notices us. She lets us leave, because we learned that she has a vision herself. So just this one time, she lets us go. Then that dumb thing with Thoma suddenly is getting captured for whatever reason happens, and we stop Baal from getting his vision. Baal then casts a dimension within her mind that only she and the traveler can enter. So, we fight her there and we get fucked up, which is a good indicator of Bao's power level, telling us that the traveler is not ready to dance with the queen just yet. But then, we get saved by Thoma. What the fuck? What the fuck is this? Baal is speed. She walks faster than the eye could see and can literally teleport. She doesn't go after the traveler and Thoma, who is just limping away from her.
Oh, but Baal just probably can't be bothered and has plans for them.
No, that's wrong. Baal wants to kill the traveler because she realized immediately that the traveler is the only threat to her plans. Not Sangonomiya or her rebellion, just the traveler. In that instance, she should have done so. But no, we just had to have plot convenience by letting Baal just let them go for whatever reason. So that happens and Thoma has to hide. We're told of a rebellion further down south led by some girl named Kokomi Sangonomiya, and we're to find her and help her so our powers could be put to good use by a man who has already been waging war since God knows how long. The traveler heads south and meets Teppei, the boy you're all manipulated to like, but is actually just complete garbage plot device, and he leads us to his captain. We then hear reports of the front lines up in Yashiyori Island is heating up. The commander tells us to help, and we do so. We have this useless 1v1 segment that actually doesn't contribute anything to the overall battle for some reason, and then Sangonomiya herself shows up with reinforcement and pushes Baal's troops away for the meantime. We learn that Sangonomiya's rebellion isn't actually doing so great. Morale is low, supplies are low, and they actually haven't been getting much progress other than fending Baal's troops from advancing into Yashiyori Island, which in itself isn't actually progress. I'm going to talk about Sangonomiya's rebellion first and how utterly baseless and garbage it is too. Rebellions are fueled by outrage of their status quo and an ideal that seeks an improvement of that status quo. There's a lot of political workings that make up a rebellion, and I'm not going to talk about it, but I'm going to summarize it with this little question. What keeps Sangonomiya's rebellion together? And who the hell are these soldiers and commanders that are fighting against Baal? They're nobodies and sympathizers. Kokomi's rebellion is just Mihoyo's idea that they thought would be cool, but without actually bother to think about it for more than 5 seconds about. The rebellion doesn't actually make sense. You know what would have made sense? If the rebellion actually had a better backbone. What if Sangonomiya was actually a political figure that has long been a voice against Baal? What if Sangonomiya was a representative of the people native to Watatsumi Island? Since there's an entire lore about how their ancestors there used to be like fish people or something, they should have given the soldiers that are in Sangonomiya's rebellion a personal reason to fight against Baal, like relatives of previous vision holders who died or got fucked up because of Baal, or foreigners who fight against Baal's xenophobic laws, poor and oppressed people that are tired of Baal's rule. Anything would have worked. I can think of a few ideas on the top of my head. Point is, rebellions are not fueled by just sympathizers and ideals. They need logistics, supplies, powerful supporters, strong leadership, strong convictions, and a political identity. Only one of these are what Sangonomiya's rebellion has, and I'm supposed to believe that they've been waging a war against Baal for years now? We also hear that Sangonomiya is really shy and an excellent advisor, but what the fuck has she done to prove that? She does nothing to prove that she's an excellent military strategist. We never see Sangonomiya make good decisions that actually strategically important. But whatever, let's suspend our disbelief for a moment and say that Sangonomiya's rebellion actually has been going strong until today for whatever reason. So after learning that the rebellion isn't going well as of late, suddenly they're getting supplies from a mysterious benefactor who's giving them supplies and weapons, which gives them a fighting chance for now. Then, learning of the traveler's supposed power and ability, Sangonomiya suddenly makes us captain of Swordfish 2, which is, again, actually fucking stupid. This guy is a stranger, why would you make him a captain immediately, but whatever. Teppei then shows a hint of jealousy that actually made me thought that he might actually eventually betray us or something, who we only help by killing a few squatters living in their turf. We fight for Sangonomiya for a little while, but then we eventually learn about the sickness that's spreading throughout the soldiers, and we learn that they come from the weapons that the benefactor has been giving them for quite some time now. We learn that the benefactor is actually the Fatui, and we get to see Teppei get old and die. This was complete garbage, by the way. the way. There was tremendous potential in Teppei and emotional baggage that he could have brought to us. But instead, Mihoyo manipulates us to like him by how the traveler reacts to him. We barely spend time that's actually meaningful with him. All he does is that he tells us about his ideals, that he just wants to be useful. And the game forces interactions with him with the traveler to spark empathy, but it just doesn't work. This is Mihoyo's way of cutting corners to have Teppei be liked without actually putting the effort to make him likable. If you felt bad about Teppei or you liked him, you got manipulated, but I don't blame you. Teppei met the traveler as he was fighting with some baddies and almost got screwed himself. He then leads us to Sangonomiya, which we were then divided into another group. We never fight together, we never had any meaningful conversation, we never had anything that made us sympathize for Teppei, we never had any meaningful connections with him, only that he wanted to be strong and useful to the cause, a cause that we don't even really know why he supports in the first place. Teppei was such a wasted opportunity here. Let's first talk about the Fatui's involvement in the next part, which was actually a plot twist I saw coming a mile away. As said, we learned that the Fatui has actually been selling delusions to the rebellion to earn a profit. Then, we meet the leader of the operations, the Balladeer, Karamush, the sixth of the Harbingers. I was expecting that the Fatui was their mysterious benefactor, since it's the only thing that makes sense. As obvious as this twist was, it's the only sensible one. And it's good enough, I think, but that is until we learn about their motivation. They started this war because they wanted to sell delusions. Delusions that fucking kill their goddamn holders. This is straight up idiocy. We learned from that one guy, Victor, in Mondstadt, that delusions were actually what made them special. It's probably why Fatui agents were able to wield elements without being gifted visions themselves. Cool. So why does it not kill the Fatui agents too? They must have sold them knockoff delusions, I hear you say. But they caused this war because they want to turn a profit, right? So the smart thing to do would have to sell proper delusions to both sides of the war to make it last longer and thus have more demands. Like what any smart war profiteer would have fucking done. An example of this done right is Anaheim Electronics from the Gundam universe. And we see that how this shady corporation is making big bucks by selling weapons of mass destruction and Gundams to both sides of the war. The Fatui should have done similar things, because if they wanted the war just to sell delusions, why the hell would they kill their own customers too? Also, the Fatui wasn't even selling their delusions, they were giving it to them. They were mysterious benefactors. They gave this stuff for free. How the hell were they supposed to turn a profit? Oh, it's just a ploy to get closer to the Raiden and get their noses. Cool. Then sell the delusions to her side as well, so you can get closer to her and thus earn an audience with Baal, and thus also get the chance to steal her noses. It's fucking dumb. That's what they should have done. That's what Mihoyo should have written that they would have done. The Fatui's involvement was really the only choice they have with this plot, but they executed it so poorly. To me, the Fatui in Inazuma don't appear as a cunning and conniving group of aggressive diplomats and conspirators like what they had me believe them to be in the Lue arc. Here, they're fucking idiots. Anyway, we don't even fight the Balladeer. He does that
Let the hate flow through you
thing and we just pass out. Then, sexy fox lady Miko comes out of nowhere and we wake up in her shrine. This is just more garbage. Plot convenience is rapidly becoming Mihoyo's weakness, and quite honestly, this was one of the worst, because she just appears out of nowhere. How did she know we were here? How did she know about the factory? But bah, let's go along with it. Sexy fox lady knew where we were because of sexy fox lady magic, and we wake up in her shrine. She then proceeds to drop exposition about Baal's past and who she really is, and she even trains us so we could get prepared to fight the Shogun. Then, suddenly, she takes us back to the shrine where she intentionally had us meet Sarah Kojo. She tells Sarah to come back so we can have proof that her leaders are manipulating Baal. Of course, since Kujo is actually a good person, she gives us the benefit of the doubt. With this time frame, we pull off a heist to steal some documents with the help of Sayu. Sayu actually feels ham-fisted in this story just so Sayu havers can feel relevant. We get the documents and we get the proof to Sarah, and she questions her master. We follow her and see that the warrant for her arrest has been issued for some fucking reason, and as we meet her master, we learn that her master really was working with the Fatui, and she decides to face the Shogun to tell her the truth of what she's actually doing. As we follow Kujo, we find fucked up bodies as we go along the way to the Shogun's palace, and we see Signora, Baal, and Kujo's unconscious body. Signora then tells nothing burgers to the traveler, and then we challenge her to a duel before the throne. Now, let me ask again. What the fuck happened here? Where did Signora come from? And why is she suddenly here with Baal? Plot convenience much again? Jesus fucking Christ. Why is Signora suddenly here when she should have learned by now that the Balladeer or Scaramouche has the Gnosis already? That they could have just left. What, did the Balladeer want her dead or something? Whatever the case, she's ham-fisted in this segment for some reason just so we could have a cool fight. I truly believe that if Signora was going to be executed, it should have been satisfying. It's fine having her die here, to be honest, but her death should have at least implied something. Her death should have been
something meaningful. Like if the balladeer intentionally betrayed her or something. And if this was actually the case, they should have left crumbs to hint at this.
This would have told us a lot about the current relationships within the Fatui and the Harbingers, that despite the Fatui's oneness in evil, they still have a lot of gripes against each other, which was already hinted at when Signora intentionally left Childe in the dark back in the Liyue arc. But sure, let's suspend our disbelief for the 50th time and forgive MiHoYo for breaking every rule of storytelling at this point and continue. So the traveler gets stunned again and marvels at the Musu no Hitachi, or whatever Baal's noble phantasm is called. Paimon lament the fact that the traveler may actually not be able to defeat her ever, and thankfully, since we are the victors of the duel before the throne, Baal lets us go this one time. We got a cool segment where the traveler is utterly speechless and possibly traumatized as we leave the place. Suddenly, when we reach outside the gates of the palace, we meet Kazuha and the boys, which conveniently appeared for out of nowhere for some fucking reason, and at the same time, Baal decides to fuck us up. Kazuha's dead vision revives and he bolts in to save us, and the traveler gathers courage and we decide to fuck her up. When we charge in, she casts unlimited blade works and puts us in her little pocket dimension again, where we fight her. Just as we were about to lose again, Sexy Fox Lady appears by putting her consciousness in that thing she gave us, and the dreams and ambitions of all vision holders in her little statue comes to life and blesses us with powers. And when we fight her again, with this time winning, Fox Lady changes A's mind, she lets us go, and she stops the vision hunt decree, and boom, everybody lives happily ever after. Rushed, half-assed, and utter garbage. We don't get to see Sangonomiya do something meaningful or getting fleshed out in the rebellion. We don't get to see Goro, this forgettable little bastard, actually do anything or learn much about him. Sayu shows up for like 30 seconds and fucks off. A is apparently still accepted and loved despite having literally thousands of people die because of her. And lastly, the characters I mentioned are a waste of big potential. You know that bit with Yoimiya, where we see fireworks with her, or that scene in Ayaka where she was flower dancing? These wasn't actually part of the main story. More like a side bit just to make the main story of the arc feel a bit longer. But it's scenes like these that actually make us interested in the characters. It should be how characters are written, to characterize them by the way they interact with things or speak to different people without being pretentious or manipulative in the framing, so we could relate or get the illusion of sympathy for them, like fucking Teppei for example. If MiHoYo can make us like characters like Zhongli, Toma, Amber, and Kaya just by our first introduction alone, and how we interact with them on their arcs alone without even touching their hangouts, then why can't they do the same with literally everybody else? I know people have different tastes. They're going to like different people in different arcs. You're going to like the blank slate that is Sangonomiya for whatever reason, or Fischl just because you like the chuny girl stereotype just like me, or Venti the moment you hear he's a trap. But despite everyone's tastes and how they think of every character's respective arcs and storylines, in Inazuma's case, it's like MiHoYo didn't even bother putting the effort to make its arc or its characters likable. I refuse to believe that a respectable writer wrote Inazuma. It has to be something else, a newbie writer that they hired off some Chinese freelancing website or something. MiHoYo walked 3 steps up with the Mondstadt arc, then 5 steps up with the Liyue arc, but when it came to Inazuma, they got people to think that they were gonna take 10 steps up, but then they just actually jumped off the stairs and fucking died. I'm gonna say it again. Inazuma was a massive waste of potential because they had something here. The concept of Inazuma itself was $1 million idea, and hell, they broke the records of sales from Baal's introduction alone. But the problem is that they set up the characters in this story to be more than how they appeared, but when we actually got to know them, they're actually less. The only fleshed out characters in this goddamn arc was probably only Baal, but even they didn't use her to her fullest potential. Meanwhile, they had Bennett fleshed out just by his hangouts. And if they can flesh out Bennett in just a 5-minute hangout, why can't they flesh out characters involved in an entire story arc?
Have someone looked at the script first before you start coding it into the game, because I feel like they excited themselves too much. They coded the story in the game first before actually looking at their story again. I want another Liyue in Genshin Impact. I want to feel the same confusion I felt when Liyue's god Morax fell out of the sky and fucking died. I want to feel the same hype I felt when Ningguang lifted the Jade Palace and when we fought that water god. I want to feel the same shock I felt when I learned that Zhongli was actually the god Morax and that he had faked his own death just to see if Liyue was capable enough to defend itself without him. I want Someru, Fontaine, Natlang, Shinezaya, and especially Kanria to make me feel the same things as I did back in Liyue, or perhaps even better. I want MiHoYo to be consistent in delivering great characters and great stories, because again, these were the reasons why people stuck around and keep playing their game. If MiHoYo keeps going down the path of half-assery, people are gonna start discussing about how they no longer care about Genshin Impact, and they're not going to be able to pinpoint why.